And we're here with John Geyston from John Geyston's Martial Arts and Royce Gracie Academy in Springfield, Illinois. John is a prominent businessman in the Springfield area, and he's a prolific martial artist himself. John, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you today about was, do you remember the first martial arts class that you ever took?
Yeah, I took one. My mom put me in at 9, and kind of for the same reason kids or parents put kids in it for today, and that was being bullied. So, with my age being 52, so that was some time ago. So, I mean, that's a scenario that's been happening ever since then. But, yeah, it was a Goju-Ryu school, and the best that I can remember as a 9-year-old, that was downtown, somewhere in the block now where the Hilton and the Convention Center and all that was. And there used to be a gas station on the corner of 9th Street. She would drop me off there. I would walk to the school, come back. But they didn't even have a gi. They had, like, Fishman's Sporting Goods store was down the street, and you had to wear gray sweats until you earned the right to have a uniform.
So you basically had to get your first stripe to get your uniform.
Yeah, and I was terrible, so I had the sweatsuit the entire summer. Who would wear a sweatsuit in the summertime?
It's amazing that you stuck with it.
Yeah, well, I didn't. It was 3 months, and then I was out of there. And then, I just remember that being that. And it wasn't that great of an experience because I think a lot of people who taught martial arts back then, even myself, teaching in the 90s, we still taught the way that we were taught. And it was like you taught adults, and then you thought you could teach kids the exact same way.
Right.
And you can't. Mentally, they cannot adapt to the same concepts and the same context in which you're teaching as an adult can. So, the physical moves have to be adapted a little bit, and I think that's the big move as teaching martial arts, something that probably around mid-90s, 94, 95, that I became aware of and made a big change in how we taught kids. And it really was from my experience back to when I was 9. Why did I not want to stay with it? Even when I was 15, I did some boxing and stuff in the middle there, and then at 15 I got back into it at a Shorin-Ryu school ran by Ron Rollins, which was under Phil Keppel. And then Phil Keppel was the first guy to teach martial arts in the state of Illinois at that time. So I think he started in 1962.
Wow.
Of running the first school that opened up in Peoria. So
it's amazing to me how really new this phenomenon is as far as teaching academies.
Well, it is. I think a lot of people think it's longer, and it's not. And I really kind of was, I guess I could say, outside of minus maybe 10 years or so, I was kind of right there from the beginning. We would go to tournaments and compete in tournaments, and some of the biggest names, Bill Wallace, Joe Louis, guys who were on TV were also fighting in that same local tournament. They were your judges, Bad Brad Hefton, all these guys that fought in the late 70s and early 80s.
Wow.
Were all in it was a very small circle of people. Indiana had the big thing with the Professional Kickboxing Association. That was huge over there. And then Phil Keppel's whole group was tied to that. And there was a small group. There was only 2 schools here in town. And that was Phil Keppel's schools of karate, and then as well as Shudokan karate at the time in the 80s. That didn't happen over here till the 80s when Shudokan came. So really in the 70s, that was it. Outside of Taekwondo schools, and I don't mention them out of disrespect, I just don't know much about them because the Korean and the Japanese,
right,
we never were on the same tournament circuit, nothing. I just, my experience doesn't know much about them to talk about it. But.
So you started full-time at 15 and you've been at it ever since? Did you have breaks in between?
I did it for about a year and a half when I was 15, and same thing, it just wasn't my thing. And it really come down to how it was being taught. I think who I am today as a teacher is based on those early experiences, because for some reason I always had this fascination or desire to do martial arts and learn more about it. But the way that it was communicated, the way that it was conducted, the atmosphere, the culture of it, you kind of hit on that the other day on your post. We tried to change that, and that's kind of what defined me. But I didn't stick with it just because basically, it was not. In my opinion, the guy was a terrible teacher, an incredible martial artist, but not a great teacher at that time. So it didn't stick with me. It stuck for others, but for me, there was no connection to that. And then at 18, I got back into it. I've been doing it ever since. And I could probably say since 18, I have not done martial arts a minimum of 5 days a week since that time.
That's pretty awesome to make that sort of a statement. I can
Yeah.
tell you from the perspective of a white belt, walking in doing 5 days a week is tough.
It is,
tough
yeah.
right off the bat, much less after 30 years of doing it.
Yeah, and I think it just kind of, you know, maybe that time, and I don't know if it was me or if it was the way that it was being taught or what it was, but it just connected at that point. And then that obsession, that whatever that was that kept me wanting to do it, but the other part kept me not wanting to do it. Once I found that and that was corrected, then boom, it was an obsession, and it became me. And I really like the individualized aspect of it.
Right.
Because, you know, I played baseball, was decent, wasn't great, ran track, but that was pretty much it. I had no real team sport mentality type thing.
Right. Well, what about your evolution through martial arts? How many different arts have you participated in and trained in so far?
Well, a lot. You know, obviously started Goju-Ryu, which is completely different than the Shuen-Ryu that we did when I was 15, and then to Shudokan. So all kind of related, harder style martial arts. Goju-Ryu is a more of circular motion, martial arts based rather than linear, where Shorin-Ryu might be that. And Shorin-Ryu was kind of a combination of that. Shudokan may be more linear, but not as linear and as strong as what Shotokan would be. So that's what I did. And then about 1989, I wanted to dabble in other stuff. I started kickboxing in 83 was my very first kickboxing match for PKA. And there was a huge difference in competing in points, kickboxing, and then coming back to a karate class. How you did things were different. And the thing that I always questioned about the traditional martial arts was, why do we run kata one way, do self-defense one way, and fight a different way? To me, it should all be connected. But then again, the love for the martial arts, or the respect that I had to it for that and the instructors at the time, it wasn't necessarily a rebellion type of, it was just that curiosity, why? So kickboxing was definitely different than semi-contact sparring or point fighting. And I did all three at that time. We literally would, you know, at like Griffin High School, you would compete during the day running katas, weapon katas, point fighting, and then come back that night. They set up a kickboxing, and you fight kickboxing that night. That's the way it was back then. And you know, so it was that whole evolution of that. But in 1989, Kempo karate, there was Stanford McNeil, who used to be Shudokan and was in for the 86 or 87 NKA National Karate Association convention that was held here in Springfield. And I was just blown away by the fluidity in the movement, because the footwork was more like kickboxing, more circular, and it just fit me better. And I remember asking my instructor at that time that I wanted to cross-train, and that was a no-no. You don't cross-train. And literally I was told, if you train, you have to leave the school.
Really?
They're going to kick you out of the school.
So there was basically no concept of mixed martial arts
None
at that time at
whatsoever.
all.
Even in the early 90s, about 89, I switched to that. Even in 91, 92, I remember being referred to as, what was it, the bastard of the arts by certain karate. People who I've grown up with and had done it longer with, maybe. The bastard of the art, the rebel, the jack of all trades, the master of none. Then the UFC came out in 1993.
Changed everything.
And then everything started changing. And now everybody, those same people, talk about my brilliance. And it wasn't brilliance, it was ADD. I don't think that's me.
Somebody's beeping. It was me.
Oh.
Sorry to the listeners. That was my 10:30 alarm.
Well, yeah, that was a huge, a huge change. Even in the industry itself, it was not anything. You just did not mix martial arts. And so the Kempo was that moment of moving away from that. And I had done some other stuff like Filipino martial arts, obviously the kickboxing, and at one time, during the late 80s, we were fighting Wuko, which was the semi-contact, full contact body type stuff. But you had to watch the head, and then you have the point where you weren't, as it had started to change over time as insurance companies got involved. it changed and got, and I'll say it, watered down for the most part. So it became almost a game of tag versus what it was. So the WUKA was appealing to me because you could still blast somebody and fight, so to speak. And then obviously the kickboxing started to fade out just a little bit, at least for us. Not fade out as a sport, but fade out in this area because the people who were doing it kind of just moved away from it.
Did you recognize how revolutionary the UFC was going to be on the sport when it first came? Because I know a lot of people who thought, the first 2 or 3 were just sort of they didn't understand the concept, and they didn't understand that, obviously Royce Gracie changed the world.
Sure.
But I don't think that at the time that was happening, a lot of people recognized it then. It's really easy to see the contrast now, looking back in history, but did you see that when it was coming out? Did you see what was going to happen with the industry?
No, not at all. I remember getting asked I was traveling doing I would try to do different martial arts, right? We did the Kempo, and then once I was basically booted from the system because I wanted to study something different. Once I did that, I started studying different things and going to seminars, and there was a gentleman out of Chicago, and I had a couple people that I worked with. There was a Kempo guy that was out of Dixon, and then a guy that was actually Keith Hackney's coach. Contacted me and said, "Hey, we've got this seminar on the south side of Chicago. I think that you might be interested." And it was Renzo Gracie.
Really?
But I never seen the UFC. There was only the first one was out, and I never watched it.
I didn't realize Renzo was part of that first group that came up here and was introducing it.
Yeah, he was one of the people right in the beginning. You go back and watch the in-action videos, you'll see him there. A lot of times on the side, but not necessarily in the videos. At least the ones that the family put out.
Right.
So yeah, and I just remember asking, what is that? I don't get it. And this is the way it was described to me. Imagine Japanese jiu-jitsu and wrestling mixed. And I go, really? I go, I don't even know how to wrestle, so yeah, I'll come up and see it. And I did it. And my partner, who I got paired off with, was Pat Miletich.
Really?
Who was there for the first time. Now,
No
Pat
kidding.
had wrestling experience and everything, and is kind of an aggressive personality type person.
Certainly.
And I remember him clinching up to me, and I'm just like, hey, I'm just like a karate guy. I have no clue on any of this. If you want to find a different partner, it might be better for you because I feel like I'm holding you back. And it was just, I did that completely. I'm grateful that I did, but it was kind of being just completely unaware of even what it was, let alone the impact it was going to have. And I had no clue who Royce was at that time because I never watched it. So I remember Renzo going out in the gym floor, and there had to be 130 people there. And it was a 2-day deal. We did 3 hours one day and 3 hours the next, if I remember that right. I'm pretty sure. The last day, Renzo, when it got done, laid in the middle of the gym floor and just invited anybody who wanted to come in and roll. And I mean, literally for 1 hour, just tap people out in under 30 seconds, everybody. And that was impressive to watch because I'm like, wow. I didn't jump in because, again, I knew nothing about it.
Right.
So, yeah, it was. I had no awareness of what that was, what it was going to be. And then I remember within 6 to 8 months after that, working out with Royce in Chicago.
Really? That was the first contact you had with Royce?
Yeah,
kind of ironic that you...
94, yeah. So, yeah, exactly.
Come full circle.
I don't have any regrets on everything that we've done because we went on to do the videos and stuff with Kempo and movies and different things like that, so that was all great. But there are times, especially now, that I ask myself, what if you would have embraced Gracie Jiu-Jitsu as an entire art? See, what I would do is I would learn different, like Filipino martial arts, come back and put stick or knife and that type of stuff into that, or kickboxing into the Kempo. And I tried to do that with the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, but I never embraced it as a full system. And I'm thinking, man, I'd be like one of his highest-ranking black belts.
That's true. Yeah, you'd be way up there.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but I've got to say that probably your exposure to all kinds of arts before getting involved with Gracie Jiu-Jitsu probably gives you a perspective that very few people have. Certainly you can see how effective it is contrasted against other arts. I mean,
right.
You can see the honesty of that right away just based on your background. And that leads me to another question I have. When did you first start teaching, and what was it?
I was teaching the Shudokan. I started doing it at 18 out at Lincoln Land Community College, and Dave Isaacs was the instructor then. And it was only like 5 or 6 of us that I can remember. It could have been more than that, but there was 5 or 6 of us that were very close friends. And intramural club, I guess it would have been. They just had one there on campus, and that was connected to the Shudokan club run by Doug Dennis, and his Dave Fasik at the time was his assistant. And he started doing it then, and it was the 3 semesters later, so like a year and a half later, he left. Like anybody in a community college would, he got a job, moved to Tennessee,
right,
working for a trucking company. And Doug Dennis, I remember, came to, I want to say I was maybe purple belt, which was under brown belt at that time, and then there was brown and there was black. And I remember him asking me and then John Patterson at the time, who was brown, if we wanted to take over the school, teach out at the college, and if we took that over, we'd get free membership at the main school. And my hand, when I heard free, was already up in the air. So I'm like, I'm in. So I think we paid $5 a month to work out at the college, because of being a intramural sport type thing, activity or whatever it was. But yeah, that's
so
I
from
fell in
that,
love with. I liked it because one is I got to do it more, but then I started realizing I got better because I had to think about something and try to explain it to somebody. Then I would really see a technical growth in myself, and it was really neat the first testing we did. We're talking about college people that are my age, 19, 20, 21, who would hug you and stuff and be grateful for what you shared with them. I'm thinking, this is cool. You can change people's lives that, wow, So, I joke about it because I was there for law enforcement. That's why I took the martial arts for the self-defense side, studying law enforcement. And then Billy Anders was probably my closest friend at Lincoln Land at that time. And we would cut class to go over and stuff in the gymnasium. And so, I always joke, I ended up doing the career at Lincoln Land, but I did it by cutting classes, so which I don't recommend to anybody listening.
That's funny. So from that evolved John Geyston's martial arts. How did you go from teaching 5 people at Lincoln Land to you're probably the most significant martial artist in the community? I mean, how does that evolution take place?
Perseverance. No, we and I appreciate that comment. Lincoln Land, and then the same thing as you're getting close to being done with your associate degree and trying to figure out what you want to do. And I didn't think of it as a career in any way, shape, or form. I taught for 13 years, going to Lincoln Land, Sangamon State, during a couple nights a week during classes, then working UPS, driving courier cars for the bank or stuff like that, the stuff that you do when you're 21, 22. And I started teaching at Williamsville Health Club at the top, because we wouldn't teach in Springfield because our instructor had to school in Springfield, so that would be conflict of interest or competition. So there was a bunch of us at that time: Williamsville, Rochester, Chatham. I think Dominic Janazzo and even Vance Diopra had a place in even Loami. So we started to do these little satellite programs. So I started there, and we did about a year. And again, just most of the stuff I just fell in my lap. Williamsville wasn't, being in the health club, we couldn't expand or add more nights or anything like that. So we went across the blacktop to Athens. I rented there. It was like $170 a month rent. And I ended up,
what year was this?
it would have been 84. And I ended up buying the building. It's right next to the post office, and I think it's still there. It was a laundromat, and I think it was used as a karate school not too long ago, like 7, 8 years ago.
Really? You should go buy it and
Well, I bought it then.
Yeah.
Because I remember, I take that back. I think my rent was like $400, $500. I bought it, and my mortgage was like $170, which just made perfect sense. So I bought that, and then in '89 wanted to move to Springfield because now we're not a part of that group anymore. So we moved it to Springfield, and again, very small, just bounced around. I never had any concept, because everybody said you cannot teach martial arts as a living. You can't do it.
So that was the accepted wisdom at that
And
point.
you couldn't do it. And nobody I knew that I held in even high regards or reverence to.
But obviously, at
was able
some
to do
point, you disagreed with that and decided to, make it what it is now. Did a light bulb just go off one day, or did somebody?
I think just.
Did you just say, "The heck with it, I'm going to do what I want and make it work"?
Three or four locations moving and always moving because we needed to grow. And, and when I say grow, it'd be like I had a place where 15 people would fit in. Now I need a place for 25. Then it was 30 or 40. And it was frustrating because of college and everything else, how to keep up with it. So I gave a school away to a friend of mine.
Wow.
And then just went and started training some stuff because system politics and all this other stuff, these people here, you can't do that. You end up in the same thing with people telling you what you can and can't do. So I got away from it not quite a year, and I taught out of my garage, and I ended up with like 15, 20 people in my garage by them finding me.
It's ironic too, because that's kind of a Gracie tradition right there.
Yeah,
also.
exactly. So then we moved it to Springfield on Clock Tower Village. And then I took a job. By this time I was working for 11 years. I worked full time as labor relations. I can't remember what the title would have been. Anyway, labor relations specialist. I handled grievances, contract negotiations, stuff with the state of Illinois for DOT.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, it was an interesting job, and I really thought that's what I'd be doing the rest of my life because I enjoyed it, and that's where I switched my gears to in my college education. And again, I kind of accepted that you're going to do this for your career, and you love martial arts, and you teach that as a hobby in the evening. And I got recruited by the Teamsters for almost twice the pay, and went to work for that, and because I thought that'd be neat to be on the other side. And helping people more than helping business. And I didn't care for it whatsoever because it was more politics than, at least at the time with that group, because they were going through their own turmoil. I want to say 7-8 months I stayed with them. And I just said, I want to pursue this. By that time, though, I had videos that I self-produced in 1994. So this would have been 96-ish. Those videos were taking off. Karate International magazine had done a couple features, some articles. I wrote articles for them. And I was starting to get seminar gigs where people brought me in to teach seminars. It was because we called it the Complete Fighter Series, teaching the stand-up, joint locks on the inside, and takedowns and ground. But now I look at the ground, I'm thinking, wow, I didn't do anything. But anyway, from a martial arts standpoint, we did that. And the videos took off. Century had not yet, I shouldn't say that, because that Century happened like 99. 97, I went off and I spent like a year I had asked if I ever thought about doing movies. And I'd been asked like 2 or 3 times from people. I'm like, that would be kind of cool. Michael DePasquale, who was the publisher and editor of Karate International magazine, mentioned it to me, and was having these stunt camps where you learn how to fight for movies. So I went to that, never knew a soul, went to like 3 or 4 of them, and then drove to Wilmington, North Carolina one weekend when I was off work. Drove there, auditioned. There was like, I want to say 700-800 people auditioning, and there was only like 100 spots. And I'm thinking, this ain't gonna happen. And I got the gig as a fighter. Wow. I had a speaking line, but they messed it up. They messed up my schedule. They brought me in a day after they shot that and thought I was a no-show. But they had me coming in, actually late. So yeah. So
Please tell me that was Chuck Norris. You got to meet Chuck Norris at some point.
I didn't, and that was kind of when I decided, hey, I got videos, I got seminars, I got this. I'm not happy working for the union or doing this anymore in the labor relations, I should say. I'm going to try this. And I had 3 people, a really close friend, my former instructor, and then kind of a borderline hater, liker person,
Oh,
all call me and tell me I was making the biggest mistake in my life not to do it. So I'm like, okay, well, that's a challenge then. And I did. I went 18 months. I did it. I went 18 months. I made $500 in 18 months. And I mean, it was crazy. And then I couldn't even get a bank. I had 7 banks turn me down on loans. And the irony of it was, on the 18th month, I had a bank tell me that these numbers are impressive. Yes, we'll do financing for you. But at the same time, my accountant told me I owed $10,000 in taxes because I made so much money. Because all I did was try to do what the banks needed me to do. So that's kind of how it all fell into place. And that hit, and I actually opened up full-time on Stevenson Drive. And there is a little small grocery store there now. It's in a small building. You got that True Value, maybe? Is that what it is? Hardware store. There used to be pre-hop cleaners. Then us, and it's in a little strip mall. And the whole building was maybe where we're sitting right now to that window, maybe 2/3 of the way out to the floor. That was restrooms, lobby, office, and mat.
So like a small 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah, my matted area that I taught in was probably just about 5 foot bigger than this area right here, this lobby. And we ended up with 170 students there.
You've come a long way, baby.
Yeah, it did. It all kicked in, and the plaque right there behind the wall was a couple years ago. We were put on the cover of MA Success magazine. When I moved back to Springfield, I did move away for a little bit. But we always had people teaching under my name here. So when we moved back, we went in 3 years, we went to 725 members. That included MMA, fitness, kickboxing. We don't do that now. So we're right at about 360 members that are just martial arts only here.
That's still got to put you at the #1 student population, I would guess, of any school in Springfield.
Yeah,
easily.
Out of more, I don't know. I guess I will say bragging. I know that our academy has more students in our academy than all the schools combined in this town put all their student rosters together. So there, and I always say there's a reason for that. And again, I think it was those early things that we talked about, the first experience. We've done everything to try to correct those. We want to address bullying. We want to address women's self-defense. We want to look at martial arts and understand just because it's a traditional thing doesn't necessarily mean it's right, that it's okay to say this needs improvement. We want to create a friendly atmosphere but still has that protocol, etiquette, and respect, which is the martial arts and what you become by being a black belt and the journey of that. So I think that was the chemistry and everything that we found and kind of what we contribute to doing that.
Well, I would like to say, for the folks that are listening, that I can personally endorse John and his product. I came over here and I've worked out 2 days now. Today will be the 3rd day. And I've got mystery bruises all over my body, but I feel great. And every time I walked in the door, everybody's been super friendly. It's totally not an intimidating place. If you've ever thought about doing martial arts, this is the place you should really come to first in Springfield, I think. If you want to have a good experience and not be turned off on getting into jiu-jitsu or MMA or any of the self-defense courses you have, I think you got to come here.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate that because that's really what we try to accomplish with that. We want, if you're, I always say a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, they're nervous, but that 32-year-old is nervous too.
Right.
And
absolutely,
you've got to pay attention to that right from the beginning. Think about it. You walk into a weird place. You got to scream, you got to wear pajamas, you're walking around barefooted, you got your body doing things it's never done. It's never done before.
In front of
where's the mystery bruises? That's probably from the grappling, right?
Yeah, I think from the takedowns.
Yeah,
from the takedowns last night. Maybe the bulldozer a little bit.
It's good drills.
Yeah. Nixon actually took some classes from you.
Yeah, when you were on Wabash.
You did?
Yeah, I did. But then I was in a car accident, so I couldn't go anymore.
So Sensei Bud, Sensei Bud?
Yeah. He was there, and some other guy.
So when you coming back?
I don't know. I'm really out of shape. I'm
you can be on the same schedule. Just
yeah.
I'm incredibly out of shape. I just had a baby.
This is the place to be for that, though. This place will whip you into shape in no time. I can tell you
In
from
a
my
fun,
experience.
positive way.
In a positive way,
Let's
really.
see, today-
Because I had the baby, I haven't really had a chance to work out, so I'm like
So
incredibly.
we'll start next
out of
Monday
shape.
or Tuesday.
Oh yeah.
You'll enjoy
I'll
it.
get so hurt.
Later on, you'll thank me
everything.
for it.
Absolutely, I totally agree, and I'm very thankful to have this opportunity again. I've had a lot of
Because you've trained a couple, and they've all been great places.
That's true. I would say that the training that I received at other places was quality training, but I would also say that there's a stark contrast between just the atmosphere of the places that I trained before and the atmosphere that I've felt here. You know, it's so much more inviting and welcoming. And the other places that I've been, somewhat intimidating on purpose, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that relates back to like a Brazilian attitude, because I've met some Brazilians who were extremely friendly and extremely open, but then I've also met some Brazilians who teach the sport who were a little more closed-minded and felt like respect was a bigger issue than making a place that was welcoming.
Yeah, there's that fine line of having the culture of what the martial arts is,
Right.
and what it does, but still being that. I think here we always say we have to be. I can't just be a teacher. I have to be a mentor, friendly. I don't want to say friends because I think that word's overused, but friendly, personal, and mentoring where they trust you to take your advice and do something. And sometimes the culture of the martial arts that I grew up in. I remember getting punched. You know, so you got to remember when I was 9, I didn't weigh 50. I weighed 50 pounds 2 weeks after my 10th birthday. So
You were
very
little.
small. And then when I was 15, maybe I was 115, 120 pounds in that weight category. So again, not a big kid by any means. And like I said, the instructor was just, I'll just say it, the instructor was just a jerk. And I was hit in the stomach, full power by him, standing in a line in straddle stance, because we're punching and doing ki eyes, and he stood in front of me and said, "Hit me." And I hit, but I don't want to hit anybody. I'm, again, 115, 120. I'm brand new to this. I don't even understand any of this. And I may have smirked because uncomfortable, and he reared back, hit me with a punch, drove me through 2 rows of people, left me gasping for air on the back of the floor, and then with his puffed up chest, walked down to the next student. That's the environment. And I'm sure in his mind he thought that was right.
But that won't happen here.
But totally wrong.
It's like one of those.
So the worst thing that you could possibly do.
Right.
And I always ask myself if I'm a little ignorant to even want to continue after that. But I really think I did take some time off, and I don't think, this gentleman and I never got along even later in life. No matter how much I would pay him respects, he would still be completely rude and just a jerk to me. Even
Sort of a Karate Kid, Cobra Kai kind of a
yeah,
thing.
yeah. I hate to say that, but yeah, because it's I respect all martial artists, but he taught me more how to teach the day than he knows, and that's
Because he taught you what not
yeah. I'm
to
like
do.
I never
so-
want any. I mean, I think that was the furthest extreme from anything that was productive for anybody. So if you have a 15-year-old, 14-year-old that's insecure, trying to figure out the only thing that you're going to teach best is someone to become a bully or an aggressive personality out of that. There's no other result that could come from that action, the irresponsible action.
Well, I was here for a kids class last night, and I was impressed by how respectful the kids were. I think kids
In a
classes.
fun way, though, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Very upbeat, fun way.
They were obviously having a good time, but I think there's a positive benefit outside of just the physical activity and having fun. I think the kids that come over here and take these classes are walking out of here better prepared to deal with all the the things that drove you to martial arts in the
Right.
first place.
Yeah, and we say that when a parent comes in and does an intro, we always tell them we want your child to see the first class if this is something they're going to want to do. Second, what I want to do is prepare them to take the group class, and I'll give them the tools like how do we line up, why do we line up, answer the whys.
Right.
So when you ask to be done, they understand, but we make it fun. But at the same time, then I walk through basic stances, the 3 basic ways that we bow, basic stances. It's a very 15, 20-minute lesson at most. But I'm looking for coordination, attitude, focus, and retention. I have a way that I grade that. And then we bring them into the group class. But I say to do that, I want to do this first because I believe in self-esteem and confidence. And it's very difficult for a 5-year-old to be thrown in with 15, 20 other kids. They've
Right.
never met a day in their life. They're all doing it right, and you're not doing it right because you don't even know what it is. And that goes back to my experience. So we take the time to make sure it's a one-on-one first. We answer all the questions. We go over the scheduling, pricing, everything for you to be a part of it. We also explain the red stripe sheets, karate homework, goal setting, weekly list, book club, healthy eating. These are different things that we call the red, because in Japanese martial arts, the red on a black belt is when you start becoming a master, that red becomes more. Like half of my belt is red for the 8th degree black belt. I've had that since I was 7th degree, 1999. But that's the mastery part. And it's mastering ourselves. And it's those things that we try to emphasize right from day one. But it's when a child's in the program, in the way that we teach the structure, the mat chats, a responsibility, all these different words that we use, we do the mat chats in the middle. Our goal is by the time they become black belt, they may never, ever, and hopefully they never, ever, have to get out of a headlock or ever defend themselves against a punch or anything worse. But focus, confidence, perseverance, tenacity, the difference between respect, discipline and self-discipline, those are things they're going to carry with them the rest of their life. And that's theirs. And that's going to help them through high school. It's going to help them in college. It's going to help them when they get a job. It's going to help them when they're doing the adulthood and they have all the obstacles that we all know happen once you get older. I think it prepares them for that.
I would agree. And this is probably a good time to tell people exactly how they can get involved. I know that you have some web specials if they go to your website.
Yeah, and it's not just a web. We'd offer it to anybody that walks in. What we do is have you basically online. We try to make the process as simple as it can be, and we offer a 6-week introductory special. We do the very first class, like I just said, but then we have you come in and try it for 6 weeks, because there's always that question. I want to see my child do it. Is he going to want to do it a month from now? Is he going to? So you get this extended period of time to try it. And so it's a 6-week program. It's $69. It includes the uniform. And then we talk to you at the end of the 6 weeks to see if it makes sense. And then we have different programs. There's 3 different levels of programming. You have to enroll in the basic program to try it out first, and then we just extend that out. So it's very simple. And they can do that. They can go to JGMAA for John Geyston's Martial Arts Academy. Some people confuse it and think it's JGMMA, but it's the Martial Arts Academy, so JGMAA.com. And they can do that find out more information about the program for kids, for adults, and then obviously the Royce Gracie Jiu-Jitsu that we're a part of, and how you can become a part of all that.
And we should tell people where you're at, too. You got basically a brand new facility here.
Yeah, we were in a great facility on the corner of Cokie Mill and West Isles. We were there for 7 years. We just moved over the 1st of July. We're at 2937 West White Oaks Drive. So
It's behind the county market.
yeah, it's
For Springfield people,
our front door basically looks at the back of Kohl's department store, but the street that runs right behind it, what is that, White Oaks Plaza?
it's White Oaks,
But
it's
we're-
West White Oaks Drive, I think,
Yeah,
right
and
here.
then like Donnie B's Comedy Club and stuff.
Yep, used to
we're in
be.
that same building where that was formerly located at.
Yep.
So.
For the Springfield people in the area, Donnie B's old building, where the dance club and the pool hall were at, that's where John is located right
Yeah,
in front
we're
of
in
that.
the, this was the banquet facility.
Yes.
So it's been completely remodeled.
Looks different now.
Yeah, so we're just on the front part, so.
You got, to my mind, the pictures are better. You know. Got a nice picture of Royce over there, got a nice picture of Ellie over there.
Yeah, it's
Pretty
good
comfortable in
all
there.
the way around.
So the next thing I wanted to ask you about is, at what point did you decide, or how did you get involved with bringing mixed martial arts events to Springfield.
See, I'm kind of giving away the secret that there was no brilliance. So far, I've said that there was no brilliance on my part whatsoever, right? The mixed martial arts thing, I didn't want to be a part of it. When I had moved back to Springfield, I had been back in the area, but we opened up the school in January 07. And actually November 06. And when I did that, I just wanted to focus on the martial arts again. I didn't want to get into the sports. I didn't want to do any of that. And through the process of that, January, February, March, I don't even remember the date that it happened. Very soon after we opened up, a guy walks into my door, comes in. He'll debate that this is not how the conversation happened, but basically come in and said, "Hey, I want to be a fighter." And I'm like, "Well, I don't teach fighters; I teach martial arts." So, I write down a number and I give it to him, to another MMA school in town. And he's like, why are you giving me this number? And I said, because I don't teach MMA, I teach martial arts. And, we had conversation back and forth a little bit at that point. I think he was offended by that, thinking that I didn't want him as a student.
Sure.
So he asked, what is the difference? And I said, okay, the difference is, and I went through some of the key points. I said, but come back at 7 o'clock and try it. He came back at 7, and he's never left. He literally did. I will say this, in the first 18 months of him as a student, teaching classes 6 days a week, he only missed one Saturday, and that was because he went to a funeral or something back home in Chicago. But that's Vince Ezell, who was 22, went on to become 22-0 as an amateur, is 8-1 as a pro, and fights Chase Beebe this Saturday on Capital City Cage Wars, and is being looked at by the UFC. So he has a big risky fight coming up. But that's kind of how, seeing in him what I used to see in myself. But I had nobody. I remember I had the chance in 1987. I fought on what they referred to as the American team on the Wuchel side. Fought in the Nationals in Ohio several times. But I made the team to go to Budapest, Hungary. Now, I'm a guy going to college, community college, or Sangamon State at that time, and working, I might have been with the state DOT at that point, but I had no, I wasn't. So I was so it had to be earlier than 87. It had to be like 84 is when I went to DOT. So it had to be before that, because I was loading trucks at UPS. And there was no way, shape, or form I could even get to St. Louis, let alone Budapest, Hungary. So never made it. And I know that there was people that went that I was better than, and they did good. So there was always that part of me, and when I seen that, I'm just like, okay, I'm kind of in position to help somebody do that, more than I could. Then nobody helped me. So yeah, that's kind of how we got into that. Now, I knew nothing. I dabbled, as I said earlier, on the ground stuff, but MMA. So in my exact words to him, I know nothing about the MMA thing, but we'll kickbox. That's as easy as walking for me. We kickbox first. We'll learn MMA together, and then we'll move that direction. And that's kind of how the whole MMA thing came. And then there was a friend of mine from Mount Zion. He was a friend at the time, and another gentleman that he was partners with out of St. Louis came to me and wanted to run an MMA show. And I would never do it because I was friends with another guy who ran an MMA show here in town. But then that guy became difficult. And once that happened, then I called him and said, okay, I'm in. So we started running the Battle of Route 66 and running 3-4 shows a year over there. And I think we did that for maybe 2-3 years. And the irony of all of it is that's where Donnie B ended up taking that spot.
Yeah, that's...
So, and then Jeff Cox had started, with Jason Worth, had started Capital City Cage Wars. Paul and Andy were their partners as well. So there was 4 of them, and we got along well with them. I tried to work with everybody, and I used to take Jeff to lunch quite often, just try to always make sure there was a professional courtesy. And we would always have seats for them at our show. Don't know if I ever remember a seat being made available to me at their show, but anyway, he came to me when Jason Worth signed with the Washington Nationals and was moving from the area, and basically the whole group kind of disbanded then because I think Jason was the financer behind it. Nobody else really wanted to do that, so he came to me and wanted to team up, and at that point I'm like, I'm not really looking to do more work at this time because that's about the time the 725
Sure.
and everything, and we have 2 academies at that point. I'm like, I'm not looking for more work, but I have one other person, and if he would come on and do it, because I think he'd be good with the media, he's got a magical voice, he's got a great business mind.
You're right about that.
And if
I know who you're talking about
and
now.
if he comes on and he says yes, I'm in. If he says no, I probably won't do it. And I go, now I'm not doing that to pressure you. I said, because it's up to him. And I said, I won't tell him that. So we had lunch, all 3 of us, and yeah, it happened. That person eventually left. So we've been running Cage Wars. Milas Copeland was that person. Milas Copeland and myself now have been running Cage Wars since, for the last year, maybe a little over a year.
Right.
Yeah, it would almost be a year and a half now, I think, that we've been running it by ourselves. And, we changed that whole production around and the show, and we're real proud of what it's become.
Yeah, it's very refined. It's a great, and I've been to a lot of local amateur and pro MMA events all over the place, and the shows that you guys put on are top shelf, absolutely top shelf.
Thank you.
And the competition, the thing that amazes me is we seem to have a plethora of talent in Central Illinois. I don't know if people get that, but something else that I wanted to make sure that the listeners are absolutely clear on, and we talked about this the other day, a lot of people don't know yet that you're involved with Capital City Cage Wars, the association.
Yeah. I like most of my students don't, because I don't talk about it. Most of my students know nothing. If they listen to this show or the podcast later, they'll probably go, I never knew that. They know nothing about movies, nothing about videos, because I don't make my academy about me. I make the academy about, my ability to teach and help you reach your goals, and that's what we use it for. But yeah, a lot of them don't, and I still don't know how many, do. And some of that's purposely, because I don't want people to ever look at our academy that we're an MMA academy.
Right.
We tried that with 6th Street. And that was really done for that purpose of moving MMA that way, because I didn't want moms to think their kids were going to become MMA fighters. I didn't want, the noon class, and you've had an opportunity to take a noon class this week. And I remember about 2 months ago, I just happened to be looking, and I'm like, there was 2 other of my friends, Mark Comine and Jared DeGroot. We were all here training because we all train and work out together, and they were getting ready to leave. And Jarrett made the observation, and I see it all the time. When you're close to it, you really don't think about it. He's like, man, look at the demographics here. There's like 12 people and a couple teens, a couple 20-year-olds. There was 4 retired. There was 4 guys that are retired between the age of 58 and 64 on the floor. And then there was 3 ladies that were, moms, stay-at-home moms. So it was all the way down to a 20-year-old who is one of the fighters that's fighting on Cage Wars. So, it was a lot. And I looked at that and I'm like, that's what we wanted to create. We didn't want, I want the mom.
Right.
It's like when you come in, you're going to go, wow, this is amazing when we start Monday. But, but I wanted that. I wanted that experience. I didn't want that. And so we kind of purposely avoid the whole MMA thing, just because I think people still don't get quite what it's about. It's a family show, but we have some people that still don't bring their kids and stuff to
Right.
Cage Wars because they see it as blood, and it's just like any other sport. There's people getting hurt less at Cage Wars than is going to be hurt this Sunday playing NFL football.
You're
Cage
absolutely
Wars
right.
doesn't come off that friendly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Where do you
So-
guys hold the events at?
That's at the convention center.
Oh, okay.
Yep. That's at the Prairie Capitol, and we kind of have an exclusive with them. We've always had that, and kind of, I'll say partnership, because Brian Oakes and the staff have always been great to work with. And the name of it, Capital City Convention Center, Capital City Cage Wars, was kind of a purposely done thing, and we've kept it that way. And they've just been great to work for.
Well, I'm looking forward to the show that you got coming up. You got some pretty outstanding matchups on this. Why don't we talk about the Cage Wars that's coming up this Saturday?
Sure. It's it's probably one, I would say this, it's and other people will tell you this. It's in the MMA, even other promoters. We're networking with a lot of promoters now. The athletic commission in Illinois changed drastically from what it was 5 years ago to 3 years ago to what it is today. And it went through these small changes, let alone when it was prior to the 5 years. It's been around since the 90s, but there never was really an athletic commission formed until the UFC decided, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, I can't remember when they first came, but when they decided that they wanted to do a show in Chicago, there had to be rules. And I think Illinois realized that they really didn't have anything for MMA at that level. There was no athletic commission. There was a boxing commission, but not an MMA athletic commission per se. So things started changing, and it's changed drastically through that period of time. And, Capital City Cage Wars is the only show, professional show, that happens in the state of Illinois outside of Chicago. And there's only 2 professional shows in that city, that area. So Bob Long still runs an amateur show in Peoria. Jason Reinhardt is going to start doing his amateur show again in Decatur. He was formerly with the UFC. And then Adam Wright runs one show every summer for the Butler County, I think it's Butler County Fair. I might be wrong on that.
I think you're right.
But that's pretty much it. So
there used to be another promotion at the state fairgrounds. Are they done?
I think from what I hear, yeah. I know they haven't done a show in over a year.
Wow.
So
so if you want to see mixed martial arts in Springfield, the convention center and Cage Wars is the place to go.
Yeah, and it's a great, we put together this time, there's an amazing card. We put, Vince is being looked at, or the main event all the way up. We got 5 pro fights that are just from the beginning of the night when the pros step on. There's an amateur card of 6 great bouts of great amateur fighters, 2 debut fighters. Then there's a couple people that are fighting, that have 4 or 5 amateur fights, and their goal is to turn pro someday. But in that pro side, we're really proud of that pro card. And that card starts off with, and it's kind of, for lack of, I've said this, and these guys are no longer necessarily with me because I hadn't, again, as I talked about, MMA, we didn't want to become an MMA academy. So there was one point that Mark Fiore, who was a UFC coach, had a gym here in town, and we started working with Mark. And then Mark moved away, and then the Kennel Fight Club became to be. And then Bobby Bretz, who's going to be on the show later, now has his own part. But Bobby was with Mark Fiore. He was with one of the people that started the whole Kennel thing. And now he has his own gym. But, so we started kind of pushing guys that direction who want to just go MMA. So the night starts off with 3 of those guys, and that's Shane Chamonix, Matt Williams, and Jay Constant. Shane
Those are going to be familiar names to a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's kind of neat for us because it's like that whole pro side outside of Tamika Brents is the only. Tamika's come over and trained a little bit with us. And when I say a little bit, like maybe 3 weeks, just training with us after her gym closed up. But those 3 trained with us and were a part of our team. So outside of Tamika, 4 out of the pro fighters, once it's kind of a homecoming type thing.
That's awesome.
And then Josh Stewart is one of the referees that night, and he was one of our team members. So I know the state just assigned him as the center referee. So it's kind of a neat show. But Shane Chamonix starts it off, and he's fighting Adrian Ortega Rodriguez. That's every fight, and I think the thing that people will say on Capital City Cage Wars all the way up to Vince, which I'll talk about more in detail in a minute, everybody has a fight on their hands. There's no, and there has been shows that run the show as a commercial for their academy, and that means they're fighting somebody that they know they have. There's no way it's like a warm-up fight that this person is just going
tomato can or
yeah exactly that they're just going to win. We create fights. I think that's what's best for the fans.
Absolutely.
When I get on the Vince thing, we'll talk more about that whole record thing. But right off the bat, Adrian Ortega is tough, And he has the potential to knock Shane Chamonix out in the first round. Shane Chamonix has the ability to do that same thing to him. So that's going to be a great fight. Then you got Matt Williams and C.J. Hunter. Both of these guys are 0-1 fighters. But the records are, like Matt Williams took a last-minute fight, literally 48 hours out. He happened to be up as a corner man for a friend, and he was offered a fight. Now, here's a guy that's fighting 150. He fought 170 on a 48-hour notice to a guy because there wasn't nobody there.
Wow.
And the fight went pretty close, but with a 20-pound weight difference from what he normally fights at, he's 0-1. And C.J. Hunter, kind of the same thing. But you can't let that record, because those guys are better than that 0-1 record. So that's going to be Matt Williams has tremendous striking skills, as does C.J. Hunter. Both have a phenomenal wrestling skills, so that's going to be a really good fight. And we have never been a promotion that pushes grudge matches. As a matter of fact, we will be the first ones correct a fighter when they start trash talking any other team or any other fighter. And people know if you fight for us, you won't be on the card if that happens to be any part of your hype. But if there ever was a grudge match that Capital City Cage Wars has, that's going to be Jake Constant and Javon Wright. They literally cannot stand one another. And I don't know where that came from. I wasn't even aware that Javon Wright even knew who Jake Constant was, let alone hating that much. Jake's nickname is Jake the Great Constant. Javon Wright refers to him as Jake the Fake Constant. Javon Wright's known as the Wolf Man. I can't use the language that Jake Constant refers to as the Wolf whatever.
We're completely uncensored, so you can if you want to, but if you'd rather not.
I'll avoid it.
It's a classic
So,
game.
I mean, they're completely, that's as close to the grudge match that you have. And we've done our best to say, listen, keep it professional, settle it in the cage. But that's the closest thing to a grudge match that we ever had. And then, Tamika Brents, I think at one time she was rated 17 in her weight division nationally, and has a contract with the Invicta, but she's coming off of an injury that she has with a knee and I believe surgery. So this is her first fight, I want to say, in almost a year, and I might be wrong on that. And she's fighting Fallon Fox. And Tamika was scheduled to fight Alana Jones, and Alana Jones got hurt in a training for the fight. So a week and a half into the fight being matched, and the Fallon Fox deal, I had 2 or 3 people call me and say, Joe Smith from Midwest Training Center says Fallon will take that fight. They would like to fight Tamika. So they knew who Tamika was. They wanted that fight. I asked Tamika. She's 100% behind it. There is that whole, as we've talked about, there's this whole transgender thing, because Fallon Fox is the first transgender MMA fighter to come out publicly, and there's that whole publicity. Now, when they came to me, I knew the name, but I never connected it. I just knew she was a top-rated, or a well-known name, and a top-rated fighter. Tamika didn't bat an eye at that. She doesn't care. And I've always told people, yes, that is the reality of what we're dealing with, but this is a great fight that both fighters wanted, and I think it's going to be a great fight that night. So that's the co-main event. And then back to Vince. Vince was 22-0. He's 8-1. He's been on a 7-fight winning streak. In his second fight, when Vince used to fight 155, we took a 145 fight on a 10-day notice for Shark Fight TV. And we fought a guy who had just submitted Jens Pulver the fight before, and Brian Davidson. And Brian and Vince and I are all friends now. It's neat to watch, because Brian just fought on Titan and actually filled in for Vince, because Vince was already in his contract. Titan fights on CBS Sports last week wanted Vince to take that fight, and we had to pass because he was already in contract for home. And Brian Davidson was the one that filled in and took the spot that they offered to Vince first. So, and it's neat to watch, because Vince congratulated him on the fight. Then Brian's blowing up Vince's page right now on him fighting the fight that he's fighting this weekend. But
Vince has got a pretty significant opponent here at home.
Yes.
I mean, he wasn't passing up an opportunity for something small time. I mean, his opponent coming into Springfield now is somebody that has absolute total chops in the MMA field. I mean, this guy's been there, done that.
Absolutely. It's Chase Beebe, and Chase was the former WEC champion. Now, a lot of people may not remember World Extreme Combat League, but what happened there was the UFC bought that out, and they actually owned it in 06. Chase was the champion in 08 and then lost that to Miguel Torres. In 2010 is when they merged the WEC titles into the UFC, and that's for the weights of 155, 145, 135, 125. So it was the smaller weight divisions of what the WEC was, and that's where the UFC had those smaller weights. If you remember, before that,
right.
158, 155 was it.
Right.
So they brought these guys in. Chase Beebe was in that position. He had just lost to Miguel Torres, and that's how Miguel Torres ended up in the UFC. So, again, Vince, a 7-fight winning streak is being looked at by the UFC. We've had conversations. Bellator has talked to us about him. RFA has talked about him. The people are interested in him. Titan offered the fight. So we feel that Vince is the best 145er that's not fighting in the UFC. And I'll say that as a proud coach of his. And Vince has been with me since day one, as we've talked about. But I also have to wear that hat as owner of Capital City Cage Wars and Vince's coach and manager. And so I would call outside, and I go, listen, guys, I have this possibility. Talk to me. If you think my head's up my ass, and correct me. But I want your opinion. I value your opinion enough to ask you. What do you think of him fighting Chase Beebe? One guy said I was a complete idiot to do it, and I could potentially will ruin Vince's career if he loses. Because the UFC looks for a 8-fight winning streak. Vince is right there. But Vince also turns 34 in December. Now, if you've seen Vince train, Vince just ran 16 miles with an oxygen mask on Saturday. That was his one workout for that day. So he's...
I can't even walk around with one of those. I hate him.
That's intimidating.
Yeah, his physical conditioning is 10 years younger than what he is. So the age, yeah, it's there. It's a number. It literally is a number with him. But we talked about that because the other option that I had for him was a guy that was like 2-14. And, I don't want to disrespect that guy, but that guy's not at Vince Ezel level. But
it would get him to the 8 wins he needs, for sure.
that would get him to 9-1, which would most likely seal the deal with the UFC. Maybe, maybe not. Because the UFC is never going to tell you what they're actually... You got to predict what are they looking for in a scouting report and what are they... But the 145, 155 is the two heaviest divisions in the UFC.
Well, you can pretty much predict that if he submits Chase Beebe on Saturday night, that's going to seal the deal.
Yeah, we think so. So
it's not like a 2-15 guy. I mean, getting to 8 wins is important. Obviously, it's a benchmark that they have. But if he beats Chase Beebe on Saturday night, that 8 wins is going to be a lot less significant than that 1 win.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I would agree 100% with that. And I think the ones other people agreed with me, and once again gave me the label brilliant. That it's the best fight for him. It definitely gets him the attention of the UFC, but it's a risky fight, and vice versa for Chase Beebe. I think with Chase Beebe, this fight gives him. You either have to be. I'm sure the UFC is aware of who Chase Beebe is, just as much as they're aware of who Vince Ezel is, if not more. He was right there. I think whoever wins this fight, you'll see in the UFC, and I think the same thing with Fallon Fox. And Tamika Brents. If Tamika wins, you're going to see her in the UFC. And I think on a Springfield Pride type of community, if Tamika and Vince wins, I really think you'll see both of them within 4 months in the UFC, and it would be neat to know that this show was the one that propelled that to the next step for them. But both of them have a challenge. I mean, both of them can lose. Both of them can be submitted or knocked out. This isn't a fight that either one can walk in and take lightly. If they're not ready and they make one, and that's the thing at this level, it could be 100% great fight and there could be one mistake made, and if the other person's timing and sense flexibility, sensing that movement or whatever it was, and just being on time before you were. Their timing was just better than yours at that moment.
And I think we should point out that Chase Beebe's kind of on the same track that Vince is.
Yeah.
I mean, he wants to get back there, too.
Absolutely.
He's worn gold around his waist, and his goal is to get back to the UFC. And for him, he loses this fight, it's got to be devastating for him as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think
He's gotta take this
Chase
very
has to
seriously.
be looking at, and that's the comments that have been made. Smart managing, smart mentoring. There's 3 guys that have signed with the UFC. We've tried to get Alex Klug to be Vince's opponent in April. They turned that fight down. They said they'd get back with us 3 different times between February and April. February and March, I should say. He ends up signed with the UFC. Alex Klug goes to the UFC, knocks out his opponent in the first round, and gets a $50,000 bonus check. Vince, in his heart, believes 100% that he should have been the one that should have been there, not Alex Klug.
Right.
But that fight never happened. But you can't blame Alex because he may not even known that offer was there, and maybe his management. But the management has to do the thing that says, Alex is 8-0. We need to get him to 9-0, and that's not the fight that gets him to 9-0. That's potentially too risky, and that's where people are coming back. Hey, you could be risking Vince's whole career.
Right.
But I let Vince make that decision. You know, I always put the way that Vince and I's relationship has been is I mentor. I'm not, father figure to some degree maybe. I put the options on the table. I say, this is what I believe, but it's your choice. What do you want to do? And, he's the one that finally decided. I said, here's what so-and-so says. And I said, I'm the one that's going to get criticized. You're the one that loses a potential. But I said, you won't be done. You just may be done with the UFC.
Well, if he wins, though, it's like playing in the NCAA championship game and then getting drafted.
Right.
In the next draft. What you set up for him is like a title fight right now, and then you win that, you're in the show.
Yeah, and I think too, more importantly too, and again, everything I say, you've been around me enough to know everything is very upbeat. I respect Alex White. I'm glad that Alex White's in the UFC. He deserves that. 2 other people, RFA offered us a fight with Moonwalker. We took it. They turned it down after we took it, and they give Moonwalker a different opponent, and Moonwalker signs with the UFC. We had another option to fight, and that didn't come through, and I'm told that guy now is going to be signed with the UFC. So they have been there, but we want to, on the flip side of that, people, and I'm not saying these 3 guys haven't done that, but there are certain fighters that have made it to a higher level, but have done nothing but fight those tomato cans their entire life. And they're the guys that are 0-3. You lose 2 fights in a row with the UFC, you're done. You're cut. I think this is the better fight for him to advance his career at the next level.
Oh, I totally agree.
If you're fighting Chase Beebe, then you're ready for the next level. You're not. But fighting this guy that's 2-14, you make the UFC, that all you had was a practice. So
yeah, they might scratch their heads at that, but if he beats Chase Beebe, they're going to stand up and take notice.
I like to think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll be on the phone with Sean Shelby Saturday night if possible. Well, we'll definitely make sure by Monday Sean knows that, if Vince wins, that he won. Here's the video clip of it. Let's sign the best 145er that's not signed.
So let's tell people how they can get there and what they have to do. Tickets are available.
Tickets at the convention center. You can do them obviously at the box office. You can also go to Ticketmaster.com, pull up the event. In the promo card, if you have a favorite fighter, Vince Ezel, Chase Beebe, Fallon Fox, Tamika Brents, Shane Shaman, any of the guys that we've talked about, you put their last name as the promo code. They get the credit for that. And we encourage you to do that so we know what fans are with who. And you just go online and you can order Ticketmaster that way as well. So those are the 2 best ways to get it. All the fighters have returned their tickets now. There's 1 or 2 local fighters that are still wrapping up some ticket sales today. But the best way is the box office, and then Ticketmaster. If you're not convenient to Springfield, go to Ticketmaster.com and take care of it that way.
And you have a couple of different ticketing options. You have tables available on the floor, or any tables still
No,
available?
we do. We have two different levels of tables on the floor. You've got the cage. Right behind the barricade of the cage, there's circular tables that seat 10 people. Those are VIP tables. Those are $60 seats. Then right behind those tables, towards the back of that area, are $45 seat tables. And then the general admission is the risers off to the side of the floor, and those are $30. So
And
there's not a bad seat. If you've been to a convention center, there's not a bad seat.
I've been to several shows. As a matter of fact, the one that sticks out to me most, and that's the next thing I want to talk about, I remember coming to the one where you had Royce,
Yes.
and you announced that you were going to have an association with Royce Gracie at the Academy. And that's the next thing I wanted to talk
Sure.
to you about. How did that come to be? And before we get to that, really what I'd like to know is, at what point did you start adopting Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu into your teaching? Because that kind of goes hand in hand with what happened later.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We dabbled with it, obviously. As I said, we dabbled with it since 93, 94. So, I know some of the critics want to say, oh, he jumped on the bandwagon. We dabbled with it. I mean, I can show you pictures of Enzo and I and Royce and I back in the 90s. And I actually interviewed Royce for Karate International magazine in 94.
Really?
Yeah, so he was, as a matter of fact, when Royce was here the first time, we used to have down the hallway all the pictures, and he's looking at that, and he's like, that's you and me? I go, yeah. And he goes, I remember, did you interview me for a magazine? And I go, yeah. So, that relationship was there. But I never really, again, dabbled in it. Like, how can we take ground fighting? How can we take arm bars? How can we take leg locks and put this into the Kempo to make Kempo more effective and more efficient on the ground? And that's, as you remember, that's kind of what we want to do.
Right.
Always make the most efficient way, and okay to break the tradition of one martial art to add something to it, in my opinion. But in 07 was when, and really with Vince, is like, okay, I need to learn how to do this because I've always enjoyed it. So we started then. It just never clicked for me because it was more of a sport jiu-jitsu association then. And we were with Premier Martial Arts, and they went through a couple different people, on that side, and all great instructors. Hermes Franca, Rafael Oliveira, and now their instructor is Vitor Shaolin Ribeiro. So all these guys, I got my blue belt under Rafael Oliveira, and that was March of 09. So we started getting more into it in 07, 09, but it was still very difficult for me to kind of understand. I couldn't teach as effective as I would like to because of that. So we started then subcontracting two black belts from Lucas Lopes, who's from Brazil, lives in St. Louis, and then Ezra Lynn, who fought in the Abu Dhabi. So two high-level guys, they came in, and in hindsight, that was when I opened up both schools, and I was just running around crazy. And I kind of wish I had more. Now, I would love to have Lucas and Ezra here now. We used to have them here every Thursday and Friday for almost 2 years. It was like 21 months. And it was either one of those two guys that was here teaching jiu-jitsu. So we had a legitimate jiu-jitsu instructor on the floor for almost 2 years, but I didn't get to train with him as much because of running and opening up the second location. Still, there was something missing that I still didn't understand. Like, what I'm doing, okay, so you do this, here's how you're going to omoplata to triangle to this. There was that base that was missing that I still didn't comprehend. So I looked into the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and I think like most people, I just thought it was a jiu-jitsu program, just another Brazilian jiu-jitsu program. But Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is a complete self-defense system. And then when you start studying the history and you understand Elio and Carlos Gracie, his brother, how they started this whole thing and where it came from, then you understand this is a complete self-defense system. Everything from knife, club, gun, to stand up. If you look at the Master Elio's book that he has out, if you put a rubber band on the stand-up sections, you'll find out that 2/3 of it is weapon threats or stand-up, and only 1/3 of it's the ground. There's more into the ground, obviously, in the advance, but that's more of the the 36 basic combatives that they teach in the basic, how we teach it here in the basic class. So that appealed to me. And then there was that explanation, like, side control, if they try to row, here is where you go. And a lot of that was hindering he rowed through Gracie University. Watching those videos over and over, getting those details down, but also for almost a year, I went to every seminar that I could find. Hickson, Hoyler, Royce, Helson, any one of Elio's sons that was teaching, I went to their seminar. I spent Easter doing a Hickson, 2-day Hickson Gracie seminar at the Valenti Brothers in Miami.
I am so jealous, by the way. I just want to get that in there right now.
Yeah, Hickson, because Hickson, to train with him is like, he only comes in, it's unannounced when he comes to the U.S. They contact like 7 schools, they do it, and it sells out in a day. And it was interesting to even just be around that. So, and I end up, the funny part of that, I don't know if I've told you this story, so I'm excited to be a part of, to be there, so I mess up. I call and I'm like, hey, I'd like to come to seminar. That's already sold out. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be 50 this year in August, and I'd really like to do this as a birthday present to myself. You know, I'm not like a fat guy. I'm not a skinny guy. I'm somewhere in the middle. Maybe just a small square of the floor. You could fit it in for a guy on his 50th birthday. What do you say? So I got her to kind of laugh, and then she calls me back the next day and said, okay, Pedro Valente, Professor Pedro says he'll do it, and it was like $300. So I jump on it. Then I find out it's Easter weekend. Now I got 3 kids, between 4 and 11. So I'm like, what if we did Easter early, because Daddy's going to be gone? And then my son was like, really? We're going to do Easter without you? How can we do that? So, needless to say, 5 airline tickets. We did the Hickson Gracie seminar, and we spent Easter that year down there.
I was wondering how that negotiation was going to go with Mrs. Geyston.
My son called it. My wife was okay. Maybe, you know, you never know the women. They're like, do what you think's right? But, so we get to the hotel. We check in, fly. I'm backing out of the hotel, and it's a small little hotel. Like, it's got 8 rooms, and it's off one of these dark streets. I'm backing out. Amy's like, stop, you almost hit. There's people behind you. And it's Hickson and his wife. And I'm like, oh, man, I almost bumped into Hickson. That would have been a bad experience.
That would have been an amazing story, too.
Yeah. And then,
like Hickson's car.
Yeah, and then we happen to go down very small, and it's got like this living room where it has a toaster and some food and fruit. And he happens to walk in the same time we do. And somehow he just started talking to me. I don't know if it was because, maybe I bowed. I don't know what I did. I might have given, and that wouldn't have been a full bow like we do, but it might have just been a head nod or something. So he started talking to me, then we go to the seminar, and so yeah, I almost hit Hickson Gracie with a car, which probably could have been a bad deal.
That's an awesome story. I'm glad we got that one out of you. So at what point did you decide that you wanted to do an association with Royce?
I did the Gracie, Henner and Heron, and I still have a pretty good relationship and still go to their immersion camps and all that stuff with them, and I think they're probably some of the best instructors that are out there. The dynamic communicators, and as you most likely have watched them do the Gracie breakdown, and I think they're just phenomenal teachers. And I did the instructor course through them, and but I just chose not to go that direction because at that time there were very stringent requirements, and as I've already kind of shared, I didn't want to get back into associations where someone says, you know, this is what you got to charge, this is how you have to do your intro. I didn't want to do that. And I was talking to a friend of mine who I actually consulted because, you know, I was a martial art consultant for martial art academies. And it was a guy who was in the Premier organization. And the whole time I've known him for like 4 years, I never knew that he was Royce black belt. And he's like, have you ever thought about doing Royce's seminar? Or I go, yeah, I've been to 2 of his seminars. I said, matter of fact, and this is unheard of, Greg Butler, who I think you know Greg from being on the floor here, and I were at a seminar in Kentucky, and it was one of those, I think I worked out 3 times with Royce in that little tour thing of that year. And I think it was the very first seminar I did with him. Not knowing us from anybody, he just come over, and then he did some drills where you had to put like your hands in your belt and then pass a guy's guard. And he kept coming over, and how long you study? And I go, I've been blue belt for, like almost 4 years, blah, 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 whatever it was. They asked Greg, they come back, and he goes, who passed whose guard? So he put us with different people. And do it again. And I know there was one time when a guy went to pass my guard, and my hands just came out. I pushed it. He goes, what was that? And I go, survival? He's trying to make a joke out of it. And Royce has that look where he's either super smile or he has a look like he wants to kill you. There's no in between with him. We're pretty close, and it's still those same two facial expressions. But then Chad Chilcutt from Memphis, Tennessee, I had told him about that. Well, Royce ended up striping both of us that day. And when he striped, he said, you guys are good. Tell your instructor Royce said so. Which, you don't hear that. I remember saying that to Jared DeGroot, and he's like, I don't even know how you handle that. You can't override Royce because he's the godfather of jiu-jitsu and MMA. But yeah, he, not knowing us, he did that. So anyway, Chad Chilcutt had mentioned, so we wanted to bring Royce in and do a seminar and see if it was a fit. And Chad had called me and said Royce was going to be back in the area. He does Memphis. He's got 4 black belts in Paducah, Kentucky. And he only has 40 like in the world. And 4 of them are Paducah, Kentucky. Chad's in Memphis, Tennessee. And then there's one, Jarrett Jessup, in Benton, Illinois. So, but he's one of those 4. They're also from Paducah. So he's going to be do that seminars for those 3 schools. So Chad's like, why don't you come to that? And let me try to connect you to, and and I'm like, okay. I said, well, he's coming here, and I said, we talked to him about joining the association. Now, Royce knows nothing about this because, Royce will be here. He'll be here November 4th, and I can tell you on November 5th, when I say what time's your travel, I don't know, but she won't book it before noon. So when we wake up, we'll look. So he doesn't have a clue where he's going next.
I saw an interview with him not too long ago, and he talks about the majority of his time is just spent traveling, teaching.
Yes.
And I think that's really cool for a guy at his level. Basically, with the absence of his father and the prominence that he gained through the UFCs, he's like the guy.
Yes.
Anybody who doesn't know the Gracie family intimately knows Royce Gracie.
Right.
So he's like the godfather of jiu-jitsu now, basically, in the minds of the normal public. And being that, he still takes the majority of his personal time to go teach his dad's art. I think that's amazing.
And I think all the sons are that way, but yes, with Royce, that's very much so. They all take that very seriously, that this was their father's art, their father's mission, and with their father being gone, the responsibility is on them now. Hickson even told a story about that when he was in Miami. But yeah, Royce is travels all the time. Last June, he had called me, and said, "Hey, Royce isn't the warm fuzzy instructor like I am, so you're never going to hear."
John is definitely warm and fuzzy, by the way. I can attest to that.
You're never going to hear how great you did or anything from Royce. He's going to look at you, either nod at you or go, "What was that? That's totally wrong." So there is no. So I get this call. I get a text message first, then he phone calls me. And he says, and it was a late one. I think he was at an airport or something, traveling. And he's like, "Hey man, you getting this? This is good. I want you to come out to L.A., visit a couple of my black belts. I want you to work out with, see how. I want you to see what they do, how it goes." That was in June. That happened in September because it was the first time he was home for 4 days straight. So second week of September, I go out there, and this was just last September. I go out there, and I'm going to do a private with him, but the very first night I get there, I go Alvaro Lima's school, which is one of his black belts, and I train with them. And at this point, I had done a private lesson with Royce. Everything was group. And he'd use me as, his partner. Uki is what we call it in the karate world, where he uses you to demonstrate. But I had never really rode with Royce, and I never really rode with anybody at a high level at this point in my life. So Alvaro, we get done, I do the class, very friendly, but very stern, but pretty open class. We get done, he puts his arm around me, says, "You did good. Did you like it?" "Yeah, good. We're going to go in the corner now and we're going to row. I want you to stay. But here's how we row here." And he gives me the rules. And he goes to his knees, does the knuckle bump, the slap. You know, everybody in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu knows what that means. We go, bam. He taps me out like every 30 seconds we did 4 8-minute rounds. And he tried to teach me in the middle. Very, very aggressive in the beginning, backed it down to more of a teacher towards the end. And I'm like, oh, that was totally awesome. So the next day, I meet Royce over at Rodrigo's school for my private. And Royce is one of those guys that knows more about what's going on than he acts. And he's a man of very few words. So we joke around a little bit. We talk. "Where'd you train last night?" I said, "I was at Alvado's." "Where else did you train?" I go, "That was it." I said, "Tonight I train here." "Okay." "Did you spar?" "Yeah." "Who'd you spar with?" I told him. "How'd you do?" I go, "I tapped a lot." "Good." So then we do the private lesson. We start the lesson, and he's like, "What do you want to work on?" I said, "Well, really, as an instructor, I just want to make sure I'm teaching everything, all the self-defense and everything, not just the rolling, but everything." It was good. Reaches across, grabs me by the throat, runs me 3 foot back into a wall. "Get out of it." And just starts. And for 30 minutes straight, he does nothing but punch at me, grab me in chokes, come at me with a club, a gun, and a knife. And then I'm like, I don't know that. I haven't learned that. He's like, "Put your hand on my knee." I go, "I've never learned this move." He goes, "Did I ask you that? Put your hand on my knee." So then we work, and then we roll. And again, and it's all playful with him. He's very, but I don't want to say even aggressive. You just got to know Royce to know that if he's treating you like that, it's because he cares. Because he's not paying attention to you if he doesn't like you. Then we end up rolling. And again, I roll with Royce for like 40 minutes. And I'm like, oh my gosh. You know, I'm calling, I got to roll with Elvado for a half hour last night. Royce, I did an hour and a half with. And then we go to lunch and we go to his house and stuff like that. I go back that night. Rodrigo does the same beating on me. Goes with me for like, I don't even know how long Rodrigo went. Come back here. Royce comes back November and promotes me to purple belt. I was totally oblivious to the fact that most likely was my test.
Wow. Yeah.
And I never caught on to that. I didn't even know the purple belt was coming when he did it. So, but you know, if you back up, I had been that blue belt since March of '09. Did the seminars, and then Chad Chilcutt. Now, if we back up a year before that, Chad Chilcutt has me connect with them, and I go down. The very first seminar was in Kentucky, and when we're leaving, Chad goes, "Hey, John, you got a car?" "Yeah." And he throws his keys to his black belt, and he says, "Royce, why don't you ride with me with John?" And it was the coolest thing because we did Memphis to Mississippi back to Illinois. So we did like 4 seminars in 3 states in 18 hours.
Wow.
I take that back. I did 18 hours on the road with him, 11 hours on the mat with him in that period of time. We got to just kind of know each other. Then he was here. But the neat thing is you don't join. What I did not know is the reason that Chad put us in a car together was because Royce does not take on new students. He does not take on new academies. He'll teach and do a seminar, but that's it. He has to like you. And if he doesn't like you, it's not going to happen. So Chad tells me this afterwards. "I think you guys hit it off. I think, he gave you the phone number to call him if you have any questions. I'm pretty sure you'll become, he'll accept you as a student." I go, "What do you mean accept me?" He goes, "Well, you just can't join, man." He doesn't do that. I go, "Oh, okay." So then he comes up here, October, I think it was, the previous October. And then he does the seminar, and we get done. That was the fight that you're talking to Cage Wars where he was at. And nothing happens. He doesn't talk about it. He doesn't invite me. He doesn't do anything. Doesn't promote nobody. Doesn't do stripes, nothing. Like, okay, it was a great seminar, though. So then I'm driving him, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm going to your hotel, drop you off, and I'll pick you up tonight." He goes, "Let's eat something first." And I go, "Okay." So we stop, and then I'm like, somehow it come up. And I, again, to this...
What did Royce Gracie have for dinner? I want to know that. I mean,
he follows that...
That's totally a breeze. Totally doesn't matter, but I'm just curious.
He follows
what did Royce have?
Well, he just wanted something quick like Subway. But he follows the Gracie diet. And it's literally was lettuce, cheese, and turkey with nothing on it. And I think he did white bread. And that's it. And then he'll usually have a banana and or stuff that he has in his bag, that, fruit. That he eats, but that's pretty much it. And everything's water. You'll never see soda, iced tea, nothing. But he brings up, and to this day I don't know if this was Royce, his way, or if it was just a conversation that started. So he said something about one of the black belts, and he goes, yeah, he's been with me such that. And I said, did Mike, which is his manager, I said, did Mike talk to you about, because that's what I want to do. I wanted to become a Royce affiliate. You want to become affiliate? Why? And, we're sitting in this car, and I'm like, well, the self-defense, the reason I lean towards this is the base, the self-defense. I want to do it the way that your father did it. I said, it just connects with me on everything else I've done in 32 years of teaching. What rank are you? I go, in jiu-jitsu. I'm like, what rank are you in martial arts? And they go, 8th degree. You teach or you train? I go, I do both. How often do you train? So I tell him, how often you teach? With jiu-jitsu, what are you going to do? So he starts answering all these questions. I'm like, well, the same way I do everything else. You teach? I don't affiliate schools. I only affiliate people.
That's kind of
He
profound.
goes, I like you. I accept you as my student right now. You call Michelle, tell her that I accepted you. She'll send you the paperwork. I don't do that stuff. He's just like, and it was pretty cool because then I'm thinking at the same time, well, what's that mean? So then we get to Cage Wars, and I said, is it okay if I announce that we're going to affiliate with you? Yes, that would be okay. So, we do that, and then I go teach with him the next day, and it's a cool thing. We get to the airport, and for the first time, there's the affectionate Royce. I get a hug, and he says, welcome to my family. You need anything, you call me. You need anything on the system, you call Michelle. Don't call me for that stuff. You need anything else, you call me. You're my family now.
Wow.
It was really neat because it was kind of like that. And then he goes, I'm having an instructor. It's all brown and black belts. A black belt test happening next month in Miami. I want you there. Don't bring nobody with you, just you. So, and that's kind of how, and the relationship's really been that good since. But that Royce thing, you just can't fill out an application and say, I want to become one. It doesn't work that way. So I think it means more to me that it is that way.
Oh, I would think so.
It's almost like you got to be sponsored, and then he has to like you. So
Right.
Like becoming a made man in the mafia type thing.
yeah, I didn't want to say that, but it was like the closest feeling that I have. You need anything, you call me. You're my family now. And there's that loyalty, and that goes back to what we were saying about he's teaching his father's art. He's 100%. And if you ever listen to him in an interview, he tells everybody, I'm nobody. I'm a product of my father. That's it.
Well, I think that relationship probably exists with the other associations too, like with Baha'i and Umayyad both. I mean, I think those
same thing with
guys probably develop a really strong relationship with Carlos Jr. and they develop a really strong relationship with Hoyler, but kind of in the opposite way. Apply for the association, get accepted, and then you develop a relationship with the person that is going to be your instructor, as long as you're associated with them. Whereas you kind of went at it exactly the opposite. Royce had to have a personal relationship with you before business could take place. I think that's extremely significant.
Yeah, and I think Hoyler's the same way. Hickson is that way, and I think it's that generation of Elio's sons are that way. With Mark, Mark Comine having his connection with J-Dub Wright and kind of that same type of thing. J-Dub Wright was Mark's instructor, but that same thing, J-Dub Wright has to sponsor you in, become a made guy or whatever it is.
But since then, Mark and Hoyler have become pretty.
Yes, exactly. And so that relationship now there is with Mark and Hoyler the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's obviously different with Royce. I mean, Royce wasn't going to put you anywhere without having a personal connection with you, and it wasn't all about business. I don't see that guy ever sitting in an office ever.
Yeah.
Other than maybe after rolling, going in there and sitting down for a minute. But he just doesn't seem the office type.
No, and he's very, like I said, there's a very loyal family atmosphere out of all of them. You know, I can only speak for Royce, but being around Hoyler and Hickson, I got the same vibe. Because when we ran into Hickson, he sat there and talked to my kids, asked how many kids we have, all that stuff. It was very family. Every time you're around him, it's very family oriented.
He just did like a 90-minute, well, might have been over 2 hours with Joe Rogan. That's
yes,
I
watched every bit of it.
Yeah,
yeah. I think it was three parts maybe.
Yeah, if you're a jiu-jitsu person, you need to sit down and watch that, because that guy is just fascinating.
Yeah, he's a little more like Royce and Hoyler are out there. They're not as accessible as people think, but they're out there. But Hickson is that mysterious person, you know, that you know of him. He's a legend, and every once in a while you find him in America.
Right.
But, you know, he's still back there in Brazil doing his thing.
Right.
And, you know, with Royce, he works a lot. But the cool thing about them is Royce and Hoyler, him and Hoyler are very tight. Royce he's been on the phone when Royce has been in the car with me, his most common phone call outside of his wife and his kids is Hoyler.
Oh, yeah.
He's on the phone the most with.
Yeah.
But when if they're not working, it's 100% play. They're energetic. I mean, they're surfing. They're
that was
the whole paddle boarding, all these different things. They're very active in that.
Surfing. Hickson talked about surfing. He was still surfing and how old is he now? He's probably in his late 50s, early 60s,
Yeah,
I would guess.
I think he's my age. I think I'm 53, 54, maybe a little bit older than me.
Yeah, I thought he was older than you. But to go out, and he's still ripped. He's completely. He's the only guy I've ever seen that could pull his abs almost back to his spine.
Yeah, it's crazy. And you watch Crone kind of does the same thing. His son now. So, but yeah, very very family oriented. And the thing about Royce too, which this blew my mind because I would not comprehend how a kid from Brazil, raised like you raised, living in L.A., but loves to hunt. So he writes me yesterday, and says, "Hey, get ready. We're going to have a good time in November when I'm there." He goes, "It's going to be a good trip, man. A lot of hunting, a lot of jiu-jitsu." So, I mean, he'll deer hunt and all this other stuff. So, but I don't know where that comes from. I remember last time he was here, he's like, "Hey, I got this deer. I need you to store it for me."
Do they even have deer in Brazil?
I don't know. I don't know where it comes from.
They do
He's in
crocodile hunting in the Amazon or something down there. They come to the United States.
He's showing me all his hunting rifles and, you know, the guns collections and bow and arrows and everything that he has when I was at his house. It's neat because that's the side you don't think. How's this guy who lives in L.A. from Brazil acting like he's a deer hunter from Central Illinois?
That's crazy.
So.
That's awesome. I would love to have Royce as a guest sometime. Can you imagine picking? Well, obviously you have. I mean, obviously you had the opportunity to pick that guy's brain for hours, but got to be extremely fascinating just to sit around and listen to him.
Yeah,
share whatever he wants.
It's neat because he doesn't open up a lot. He's great at interviews because whatever question you ask, he'll. But like personally, if you're sitting in a car, it's just not him to start saying, you know, anything about, you know, how many kids he has or anything. Doesn't share, but it's when he starts on it, like my father, this is what happened with my father, this is, you know, and then you're like, wow.
I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so this is pretty neat.
What's the next thing for John Geyston? What are you doing? What is the next evolution for you? Where do you go from here?
Evolution, I don't know.
You've gotten the academy, you've gotten the Cage Wars. Obviously, you've been successful at both. Where do you go from here? What?
I always just want to grow, and I mean, as far as the school and the stuff, like I've never looked at anything as like I'm gonna, you know, outside of me saying I'm gonna go full time was the only time I looked at the academy as business, making a decision based on I want to do this as a business. Cage Wars I fell into, but I think it's opportunity. I always want opportunities. I'm always looking for, and I always want to be prepared when opportunities come. So, you know, as far as the school and stuff like that, I'm happy. You know, I don't know. I don't know. You know, I'll tell somebody that I don't have any desire to open up a second location, but if somebody came, like for right now, I have one of my black belts that just opened up in Macomb. So, and it's an affiliate of us. I have a guy in Ohio that's an affiliate of us.
So is that
I still travel and do seminars. Started to work on an online curriculum using some of our teaching methods.
Oh, that would be cool.
That's kind of like 40% done. I thought it would be further by now. So we're doing some of that too. Originally that's just for the students, but now that we're getting people that want to do what we're doing, particularly, the blend of how we teach Gracie Jiu-Jitsu with our Kempo, with our Krav Maga, with our Muay Thai. How do you teach kids? That stuff. So I don't know. It's kind of all that. I mean, obviously, that the business side, I work on things to improve here, and sometimes it expands out. Cage Wars, we want to do more pro shows with. We want to see Vince get to the UFC. That's a goal of mine. I'll say project, but it almost sounds a little demeaning, but that's a project. I want to help him get to live that dream that he set out to do 7 years ago. So I want to do that. And then for myself, it takes like 14 years to get a black belt from Royce. So.
All right, that was another question I had, and we'll probably end with this. As a student, are you 100% all in on jiu-jitsu, or are you still training other disciplines as well?
Yeah, I still do all my stuff. I mean, there's some people that will say, because if you watch my personal post, I train jiu-jitsu every 5 to 6 days a week. I train in the mornings. But one, it's great exercise. I get to spar. I shouldn't say I can't. My body at 52 isn't going to sit there and spar standing up, because if I do, my knees and my hips are going to hurt for 3 days. Jiu-jitsu I can do every day. And I still do all those other things. Still do Kempo, still do, everything you see, the teaching. But I don't really train as much in that as I do the jiu-jitsu, because I have a goal there that I'm trying to accomplish. But yeah, I want to, it's...
Obviously, you want to get to black belt.
Yeah, it was 6 years to go from where I was to purple belt. So I do want to get to black belt. I don't know how that pans out from here. Every person's different. You don't ask. Again, I had no clue I was even getting purple belt when it happened. He lined everybody up. We get done. He looks at me and smiles, and he says, "We're done." I go, "Okay." I said, "You want to do pictures?" "Yeah, let's do pictures, but I'm hungry, so let's make it fast." So he lines everybody up. We get on the wall. We start doing a picture. He goes, "Do it by rank." So he goes, "Make sure the white belts are in the back, the blue belts." And he goes, instructors. And he goes, "You up front with me, because you're my guy." Blah, blah, blah. Does this. And then there's talking. And he comes out to the front. And Jarrett Jessup's gone at this point. I don't even pick up on that. He comes to the front of the picture. He's like, "Guys, man, you're messing this thing up. This is wrong. John, come here. Look at this. This is your mess." And I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm in trouble or what. Is he hungry enough that he's going to start getting cranky? He's looking. He goes, "What's the matter with this picture? Look at the people." He goes, "The tall people, short people, white belts, blue belts, brown belt, couple black belts." Then he reaches in Jarrett Jessup's gi. He goes, "There ain't no purple belts." So, and that's how he ends up promoting me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was complete. No, and then I'm like, that's where the smile was. Let's line up. But again, I'm not expecting it. I wasn't, I got goosebumps. I almost got goosebumps just telling the story. Then we go down and we sit down. We have to get serious in the picture, because the Gracie do that whole. Helson had me do that in Miami, and I'm just like, I'm not really good at the mean faces. So I said we have to do a smiley one after this. Yeah, and it's close. I'm in. So it's so we go back there, and I'm goosebumped out, and I'm like, I'm wanting to jump out of my skin. And then we get done, I'm like, woo! And there's a picture on my Facebook where I do the happy dance. And the photographer, Rick Falzone, caught it. And I'm like, Royce, come on. He goes, "Stop that. Don't even do that. You can't be a purple belt to do that." So, yeah, we have fun. So,
that's awesome.
The black belt, yeah, is definitely a goal. I mean, I'm going to go all the way. I don't know if I'll be 60, 65, 70 when I get it. I don't know.
Well, you got plenty of time, obviously, because Elio was, in his late 80s and still teaching?
In 90, he passed away at 95 and was teaching. He got pneumonia, got a cold and pneumonia, and was teaching.
Just days before he died, right?
Yeah. Like 10, 14 days before that, he was
still
teaching.
On the mat in his 90s. So hopefully it won't take you that long. But
yeah, I'm hoping not. But you don't know with Royce. Like I said, you get that one face and the man of very few words.
Well, I appreciate your goal. My goal is just to get to blue belt.
You know, when I started, all I wanted to do was get to purple belt, because the purple belts that I knew, Mark Comine included, and when I remember Jarrett DeGroot, I almost said Jarrett Jessup, being purple belts, brown belts, they were just phenomenal. I mean, they were good. And I thought, okay, I don't know if I really want to get that much. So even that next thing was I just like to get to purple belt, because then I'd be good on the ground. It's enough to teach Vince the ground for the MMA. My self-defense, and I know if I stand up, I can smack the snot out of you. There's no problem with that. So yeah, this will round off my self-defense. And it was like second stripe blue belt. I'm just like, man, you fall in love with it. And it is, because there's so many elements to it that people don't get, and it's I think I made the comment yesterday, and you've been around it long enough to know it's like a chess game. So when the twisted arm control we talked about, when I twist the arm control, it's a controlling position. But I can't control 100% that you can't go somewhere. But I know I can limit you to 2 movements, and I have an answer for each one of those directions you can go. So you let me know. And I remember Royce saying, "You choose how you tap, I don't."
That's
I'm
true.
like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm
It's
starting.
very profound. I don't know if a lot of people understand
Right.
what exactly that means, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's very significant.
Yep. So, you know, I think that's the you know, and all the martial arts has that element of mental. But the jiu-jitsu to me is more, and again, it's because it's newer to me. So I don't want to say I still love Kimpo. I'm still a Kimpo guy. I got some crew. We talked about it. There's a critic, right? They just told one of my long-term. Bob Burns was, when I talked about getting punched in the stomach, he was a brown belt then at that academy. So I've known Bob since I was 15. He said he was having, I don't know if it was lunch or just was with a group of guys that were shooting archery or something. And the critics, you know, there's a lot of critics. So I hear Geyston does nothing but jiu-jitsu now because he's slow and older and fat. He can't do Kimpo anymore. So, you know, there's always those guys, right? So, anyway.
Well, invite him over for a session on the ground.
Well, there's
and
the
then
same,
show.
you know, we've always acted professional, and it's funny because a guy that spoke so much in '96, that one instructor that punched me in the stomach, came in my school and threatened me because we were in the cover of the paper and all this other stuff, right? So, anyway, the guy that was with him didn't like me, didn't know me, and had said so much stuff about me over 12 years. And again, we just like, you know, that's, you know, we're the 800-pound gorilla in town. You're a 30-pound chimp. I understand the difference. I understand why you just don't like us. And I take it as that. I don't mean that condescending. I don't mean that as arrogant. I just mean, you know, I wouldn't like me either if I had 5 students and,
Right.
you know, and people justify that in the martial art world, that if you have 300-plus students, you're ripping people off or you're just con manners. There has to be something wrong because it ain't martial arts doing that.
Well, there's a lot of politics still involved.
Yeah, associations. And,
even though we talk about jiu-jitsu as something that seems to be pretty all-inclusive, family-friendly, absolutely has some positive benefits as far as what it teaches you beyond the physical activity. You know, for me, I become a lot more zen individual when I'm training
Right.
as opposed to when I'm not. And so jiu-jitsu has a lot of positives to it, but there seems to be this underlying current of politics that runs through everything, and it's not missing in jiu-jitsu either.
No, it's not. Our students never are aware of that because we don't get involved with it, and we don't. You know, as I said, this guy, he literally said anything that you could say bad about a martial artist, this guy said about me for 15-plus years. We became friends through somebody, acquaintances, I should say, not friends. And then he was at Cage Wars. And so now there's other haters. Because, you know, as a karate guy that just faked that I knew MMA. And, you know, we had one of our guys come out and take his guy out in 15 seconds. Vince put a guy on a stretcher. And another, so, I mean, we shut up some people 2 or 3 years ago here that were... That same show, someone makes this hate statement about me standing. He's standing next to this guy. This guy stands up and says, John Geyston's my friend. He's the most legitimate martial artist in this room, and was going to defend me. 15 years ago, he was saying the exact same things. So, you know, it all comes around full circle. We're good friends now. He comes to my house. I go to his house. He comes to our academy. He'll be at the fights this Saturday. So, you know, sometimes people say those things, they don't know. I had a guy from a Taekwondo school here in town 15, 17 years ago, was at a bachelor party and was ripping me, telling me how he used to beat John Geyston and he's a fake and he's all this. And I let him go. And then, he gets done and then he goes, so what's your name? And I go, John. The funny part was he kept saying, asking my buddy, how long you been? He goes, you study with Geyston, man, blah, 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 blah. He goes, you study with him too? I go, yeah, I've been with him since the beginning, man. I mean, he's not all that. He's not a bad guy. He's not the hero people make him out to be, and he's not the bad guy that people make. Somewhere in the middle. I said, even he'll tell you that. And then he's like, well, then when we get done, like 5 minutes later, he's like, so, hey, come see me sometime if you want to learn real martial arts and blah, 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 blah. And introduces himself by his last name, and I'm Master so-and-so. Shakes my hand. Then I go, I'm John. What's your last name, man? I go, Geyston. It's all defensive. I said, chill out, dude. You don't know me. You were just taught to hate me. And it's really what it was. And he became a friend of mine after that. And he's like, you're right. He sat there and told me about me. He had no clue who I was. But again, it's because the 800-pound gorilla in town. We just ignore all that,
Well, I don't want to intentionally poke anybody in the eye, but I'm going to. And I just want to point out for everybody that's listening right now, I extended an opportunity to other prominent members of the martial arts community in Springfield. One of them completely ignored me, and the other one politely declined, and I understand his reasons. But basically, you're the guy that said, absolutely, let's sit down, let's talk about it, and let's have a show, and let's get this out there. And
that was with which was going to be a round table.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. We're going to have several people associated with jiu-jitsu in the area get together and talk about jiu-jitsu. And one of the things that fascinates me is particularly the history of it. And there's another branch of jiu-jitsu other than the Gracie family, and I'd like to talk to that. Talk about that sometime, because it's something that a lot of people don't know about. And ultimately, that was my goal, and I thought we could make that happen. But as it stands, John Geyston is the only guy that's willing to stand up and talk about the art. And, I appreciate your time. I'm glad you're here. So
thank you. It was
thanks
fun.
a lot.
And I think Bobby Brett's is either later or another show or something else.
Bobby's coming up next. And Friday, you're having the weigh-ins for Cage Wars.
Yeah, Friday at 6 o'clock at the convention. That's open to the public.
We're going to be out there. I'm going to be out there, and I'm going to do some fighter interviews and do whatever we can to help promote the event. And like John says, that's open and available, and that's usually pretty entertaining. I don't know if you've ever been to a UFC weigh-in or seen one on television, but things can happen at weigh-ins that make them significant as well.
Yeah.
And then
we haven't got that down to where it's like the UFC yet because of doctors showing up at late times.
Still fascinating. Something to see.
Yes, absolutely.
You should go, if you haven't done it, you should do it once.
Yeah.
And then Saturday is the actual event at the convention center downtown. We've already talked about how you can get tickets. To remind you can get them at the box office. You can get them at Ticketmaster. And if you go through the Ticketmaster option, you can select one of the fighters, right?
Right.
That's
There's a promo code. You enter the fighter's last name.
And there are 3 different levels of options. If you want to come out, it's a great time. You'll enjoy it, I promise. The pro card is something that you're definitely not going to want to miss. This is something that happens very rarely for Springfield. This particular pro card is unusually significant, I would think.
It is.
So this weekend is the time. If you haven't been to Cage Wars, this is the one to come see.
This is, and Access TV has some great fights. RFA. CFA, all these. I can't even think of all the different ones. There's great fights. I believe this show is as good, if not better, than most of those cards we're watching on Access TV.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. And we look forward to seeing you out there. Ladies and gentlemen, our thanks to John Geyston from John Geyston's Martial Arts Academy and Royce Gracie Association now. That's unusually significant now that we found out the real story behind it. So, you guys come out here, visit John. As I said previously, I started training out here this week, and first and foremost, it's not an intimidating environment. Every time I've walked in here, everybody's been extremely friendly. If you want to get your kid involved, there are positive benefits for the absolutely the anti-bullying perspective, but just confidence in general. Being involved in this program will help your kid. It'll help you as an adult, and I can personally attest to that. So my endorsement goes out to John Geyston's Martial Arts Academy. You need to get out here and check it out, and we'll see you at Cage Wars this Saturday night. Thanks for listening.